The Cold War sky was unforgiving. Nuclear bombers could strike without warning. Seconds meant the difference between survival and destruction. How could America and its allies survive? The answer came in the form of second-generation jets that could break the sound barrier and fire missiles before the enemy ever saw them. But how did they reach such speeds, and what price did pilots pay? The story of second-generation fighters begins with fear. The Soviet Union had just tested long-range bombers and nuclear weapons. The United States and its allies knew they were within reach of devastating attacks. A fighter jet that could only match speeds with a bomber was no longer enough. Interceptors had to cross the speed of sound and fire weapons before the bombers ever came close. Aircraft like the Soviet Tu-95 Bear could fly vast distances with nuclear payloads, giving the USSR the ability to reach American cities. NATO allies faced similar threats, with Eastern Europe and Western Europe staring each other down across the Iron Curtain. New interceptors had to be built not just for wars of the present, but also for the possibility of nuclear attacks in the future. A new design philosophy was born from this urgency. Unlike the first-generation jets that relied on guns and short bursts of speed, these fighters introduced afterburners. These were engines capable of injecting raw fuel into the exhaust stream and creating fiery bursts of thrust that could rocket planes past Mach 1. It was a revolution in terms of propulsion, but it came at a cost. Fuel vanished in minutes and engines were pushed to their limits. What set these jets apart? Supersonic flight was the headline, but that was just the beginning. Their wings were no longer straight and stiff. They were swept back or shaped like deltas, built to cut through the sky at lightning pace. Guns were tossed aside and replaced by guided missiles that could lock on from miles away and strike before the enemy even saw them. And behind it all were smarter radars and cleaner cockpits, forcing pilots to make split-second choices that meant life or death. Before we move forward, here's a question for you. What do you think was the hidden danger of relying entirely on radar for interception? Drop your guesses in the comments below, and we'll get back to it at the end of the video. The North American F-100 Super Sabre was the first U.S. fighter to fly supersonic in level flight. It entered service in 1954 and immediately showed the promise of this new generation. Its swept wings, afterburning engine, and top speed of over Mach 1.4 gave America an edge. The F-100 wasn't the flashiest jet in the sky, but it was the one that showed up every day. In Vietnam, it carried bombs and rockets on mission after mission, flying tens of thousands of combat sorties. Pilots knew it wasn't perfect, but they also knew it would get the job done. Yet the F-100 was also unpredictable. Handling at low speeds was tricky, and accidents were frequent. It symbolized the promise and peril of supersonic flight. Despite being capable of breaking barriers, it demanded respect from every pilot who flew it. The F-104 Starfighter never looked like an airplane. It looked like a rocket strapped with wings. Its body was razor-thin, its wings so narrow and sharp that ground crews joked about cutting their hands on them. The moment the afterburner ignited, the Starfighter transformed into pure firepower. It climbed like a missile, smashed through Mach 2, and soared at 50,000 feet where it seemed untouchable. Pilots called it the missile with a man in it, and for a brief moment it felt like the future of air combat had arrived. But the same design that made it breathtaking also made it deadly. At low speeds, the wings gave almost no control. A stall or rough landing could turn the jet into a coffin. West Germany alone lost 270 plus. The press called it the Widowmaker, yet nations lined up to buy it, chasing pride and prestige on a machine both iconic and lethal. The Convair F-106 Delta Dart was the peak of America's interceptor philosophy. Delta-winged and capable of Mach 2, it entered service in 1959 with the single mission of defending the homeland from Soviet bombers. What set the F-106 apart was its link to the semi-automatic ground environment. This vast network of radars and computers could track enemy aircraft and feed instructions directly into the cockpit, turning the Delta Dart into a node in America's digital shield. For its time, a jet connected to a nationwide defense grid was groundbreaking. The weapons it carried were equally formidable. AIM-4 Falcons offered precision strikes. Air-2 Genie, tipped with a nuclear warhead, was designed to erase entire bomber formations in a single flash. But for all its power, the F-106 had a weakness: agility. Built to strike from miles away, it struggled in close combat and became a reminder that speed and technology could never fully replace versatility. If you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. And let us know in the comments which fighter you find the most fascinating and why. We love hearing your thoughts. The Soviet Union was not far behind. The MiG-19 Farmer became the USSR's first supersonic fighter in level flight. But the real game changer was the MiG-21 Fishbed. Compact and delta-winged, it was highly maneuverable and struck a balance the West often neglected. Unlike many Western designs, the MiG-21 kept both missiles and a cannon. This decision proved critical in conflicts where missiles failed to deliver consistent results. Exported across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, the MiG-21 became one of the most produced and widely used fighter jets in history. In wars like the Indo-Pakistani conflict and the Arab-Israeli clashes, MiG-21s clashed with Western aircraft. Their mix of speed and versatile weapons made them formidable opponents, and they became the visible symbol of the Cold War skies. France's answer to the supersonic race was the Dassault Mirage III. With sleek delta wings and Mach 2 speed, the Mirage matched superpowers. Its biggest claim to fame came not in Europe but in the Middle East. During the Six-Day War of 1967, Israeli Mirages dominated the skies, cementing the jet's reputation worldwide. Other nations, from India to Australia, flew the Mirage III and trusted it as the backbone of their air forces. Unlike some American designs, it was relatively reliable and easy to maintain. It was also suited for both interception and ground attack missions. The Mirage showed that Europe could still shape the future of fighter aviation and became one of the most exported second-generation jets. If there was ever a fighter that lived up to its name, it was the English Electric Lightning. With twin engines stacked vertically, it could climb faster than any jet of its era, reaching 50,000 feet in under 3 minutes. Its slim, swept wings and powerful afterburners made it one of the most dramatic interceptors ever flown. Armed with cannons and early air-to-air missiles, it was designed to stop Soviet bombers before they reached British skies. But this raw power came with trade-offs. The Lightning had very limited range. Still, as a point defense interceptor, nothing climbed faster. It gave Britain a credible shield against high-flying Soviet bombers at the height of the Cold War. Though never exported widely, the Lightning remains legendary for its performance and silhouette. In neutral Sweden, engineers came up with one of the most unique designs with the Saab 35 Draken. Its double delta wing looked futuristic and allowed for both high-speed interception and stable low-speed handling, something many Western jets struggled with. The Draken could reach Mach 2 and was tailored to defend Sweden's vast airspace against potential Soviet incursions. Unlike the complex American interceptors, the Draken was built with practicality in mind and was able to operate from short, improvised runways or even highways. Though Swedish by birth, the Draken was exported to Austria, Finland, and Denmark. It proved that even smaller nations could field cutting-edge supersonic fighters. Second-generation fighters were bold experiments and machines built for a world on the edge of nuclear war. And without them, the path to the legendary fighters that followed would never have existed. So what was the hidden danger of relying on radar for interception? Early sets were powerful but struggled in bad weather, could be jammed by Soviet countermeasures, and pilots sometimes launched missiles at ghosts on the screen. Radar was the future, but in the 1950s it wasn't always trustworthy. Fear built them. Threats defined them. Fighter jets are machines designed to outrun any enemy they face. Every few decades, America has built a new generation of fighters. Each new generation made the jets stealthier and was a response to enemies that were becoming deadlier. The American fleet first started with the straight-winged Sabre. Now it flies the F-35. Together, these jets chart the path of American air power. The jet age began in 1945. The first generation of American fighters arrived in the final days of World War II and carried into the Korean War in the mid-1950s. Their defining trait was simple. They introduced jet propulsion into combat aircraft. Propellers were gone, replaced by turbojet engines that could push aircraft beyond 500 miles per hour. Designs typically had straight or slightly swept wings, basic turbojet engines and cannons or machine guns as their main weapons. Avionics were limited and combat resembled World War II, except it was shorter and more demanding. The F-80 Shooting Star was America's first operational jet, but the F-86 Sabre became the icon. With swept wings, it solved one of aviation's biggest problems: shockwaves forming near the speed of sound that caused instability. By sweeping the wings, engineers delayed those shockwaves, giving pilots control near Mach 1. In Korea, the Sabre fought the Soviet-built MiG-15. These were the first large-scale jet battles. Reaction times shrank to seconds, and design mattered more than ever. The Sabre's gun sights and wing design gave it the edge, but even then, fights were brutal and costly. The first generation proved jets were the future, but they also revealed limits. Engines broke down quickly, fuel vanished fast. In fact, even altitude performance was poor. Straight-wing designs struggled at transonic speeds, and these jets lacked the climb and speed to intercept nuclear bombers. To defend against those threats, America needed fighters that could go supersonic. The second generation was born in the Cold War between 1955 and 1965. America feared Soviet nuclear bombers, and fighters had to be able to climb high and strike fast before they reached U.S. cities. The hallmark of this generation was supersonic flight. Jets introduced afterburners, which injected fuel into the exhaust for bursts of thrust. They were fuel-hungry and short-lived, but they allowed fighters to pass Mach 1 with ease. Aircraft also featured delta, or highly swept wings, designed for stability at high speeds. Their weapons shifted from guns to guided air-to-air missiles. Designers believed the age of the cannon was over. Representative jets included the F-100 Super Sabre, America's first supersonic fighter, the F-104 Starfighter, capable of Mach 2 but dangerously unstable, and the F-106 Delta Dart, an interceptor optimized for long-range missiles and radar. Second-generation fighters had one mission: intercept bombers. They were built to fly fast, climb high, and shoot from a distance. Dogfighting and agility were afterthoughts, but that philosophy was a gamble. These aircraft burned through fuel and had poor low-speed handling. They were nearly helpless in close combat. They represented the belief that speed and missiles could replace maneuverability and guns. Second-generation fighters abandoned the gun completely. Engineers believed missiles had replaced it forever. But what happens when the future of air combat turns out to still need the oldest weapon of all? Drop your guesses in the comments and we'll answer this question at the end. Third-generation fighters emerged around 1965 and ran until 1975. They came with improved missiles, radars, and multi-role flexibility, but combat exposed the flaws of missile-only designs. Typical characteristics included better radars, all-weather capability, and multi-role performance. They carried heat-seeking aim, 9 Sidewinders, radar-guided aim, 7 Sparrows, and bombs for strike missions. Early jets of this era still lacked cannons, but the war changed that quickly. The F-4 Phantom II symbolized this generation. It could fly at Mach 2, carry missiles and bombs, and serve as both a fighter and bomber. But its original design omitted a gun. Military planners assumed missiles had made cannons obsolete. In Vietnam, reality hit. Missile hit rates were often under 15%. Pilots found themselves in close-range dogfights against MiG-17s and MiG-21s, where missiles missed and no gun meant death. Later, Phantoms were retrofitted with 20mm Vulcan cannons. Another lesson came from maneuverability. The Phantom was powerful but heavy. Against nimble MiGs, its lack of agility was a liability. This forced the Navy to create Top Gun, a training school that emphasized dogfighting skill and energy management, which were concepts tied directly to aircraft design. Third-generation fighters proved the need for balance and also rediscovered the importance of agility in guns. The failures of Vietnam taught engineers that the next generation had to combine agility and advanced electronics. The fourth generation, entering service in the mid-1970s up until 2000, brought fighters that were multi-role and packed with electronics. They were built not just for air-to-air combat, but also for precision ground attack. Their defining traits included high thrust-to-weight ratios, fly-by-wire controls, and look-down, shoot-down radars. They could carry short and medium-range missiles like the improved Sidewinder and Sparrow, as well as precision-guided bombs. The introduction of digital avionics made them adaptable across missions. Representative examples highlighted different philosophies. The F-14 Tomcat was built for fleet defense, with variable sweep wings and long-range Phoenix missiles. The F-15 Eagle chased absolute air superiority, combining powerful engines with advanced radar to dominate the skies. The F-16 Fighting Falcon prioritized agility, Using fly-by-wire to achieve maneuvers no manual system could handle, the F/A-18 Hornet emphasized versatility, able to fight in the air or strike ground targets from carriers. Fourth-generation fighters saw combat in the Gulf War, where F-15s swept Iraqi fighters from the skies and F-16s and F/A-18s struck ground targets. They proved that agility and advanced avionics were the formula for dominance, but radar and missile systems were advancing rapidly. Even the most agile jets could be tracked and targeted. Fourth-generation fighters were powerful, but they were still visible. The solution for the next generation would be to disappear. The fifth generation arrived in the early 2000s. These fighters were defined by advanced sensors and networked warfare. Stealth came from radar-absorbing shapes and coatings, internal weapons bays, and carefully shielded engine inlets. Weapons like AIM-120 rams and guided bombs were carried inside to keep radar signatures low. The F-22 Raptor embodied the philosophy. Its angled surfaces scattered radar, its engines provided supercruise without afterburners, and thrust vectoring gave unmatched agility. In training, it achieved kill ratios of 20-1. The F-35 Lightning II followed, designed as a multi-role stealth fighter for all branches of the U.S. military. Its hallmark was sensor fusion, radar, cameras, and even infrared combined into one picture projected in the pilot's helmet. The F-35 turned the pilot into a battlefield manager, directing older jets and ground forces while remaining invisible. Fifth-generation fighters represented a shift. They were not just aircraft, but information hubs. Stealth made them hard to detect. Sensors made them nearly impossible to surprise. Networking made them leaders in the air. But stealth came with cost. These fighters were expensive to build and maintain, limiting how many could be produced. The question now was how to evolve beyond stealth alone. The sixth generation is being designed now, with the first aircraft expected in the 2030s. Programs like Next Generation Air Dominance aim to push air combat into a new era. Projected traits include adaptive cycle engines that switch between efficiency and power mid-flight, AI co-pilots to process data, or fly unmanned and loyal wingman drones that accompany manned fighters. These drones could carry weapons and absorb enemy fire. They are even made with the thought to scout ahead. Weapons may include directed energy systems, such as lasers to shoot down incoming missiles, alongside hypersonic missiles for offense. Designs often showed tailless blended-wing airframes with even greater stealth than today's F-35. But unlike the fifth generation, stealth will not be enough. Modern radars are already improving at spotting stealth aircraft. Sixth-generation fighters are being designed to survive in heavily defended airspace by combining stealth, speed, drones, and electronic warfare into one system. They represent not just a new aircraft, but a new way of fighting, a partnership between manned jets with unmanned drones and artificial intelligence. So, did fighters even need guns? Vietnam proved the gun was not dead. The Phantom II had to be retrofitted with a cannon, and Top Gun was founded to retrain pilots in close combat. Every generation since has carried both guns and missiles in an effort to remain multi-role and prepared for all types of combat. Fighter jets are the story of adaptation. They are machines born from necessity and rebuilt for survival in the skies. If you enjoyed this breakdown, like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the machines that shaped history.